In the tapestry of traditional Spanish life, the Church has long been the loom that weaves together the threads of daily existence, from the cradle to the grave and everything in between. Picture a sun-baked village in Andalusia or a misty hamlet in Galicia, where the tolling of church bells punctuates the rhythm of the day like a persistent but oddly comforting metronome. It's not just about religion. It's about community, morality, and even the occasional excuse for a siesta after a long sermon. The Catholic Church, with its deep roots in Spain's history, didn't merely influence life, it orchestrated it, much like a stern but loving conductor who occasionally cracks a wry joke to keep the orchestra engaged. To understand this, we must rewind to the medieval era, when Spain was a patchwork of kingdoms locked in the Reconquista, that epic struggle to reclaim the Iberian Peninsula from Muslim rule. The Church wasn't a sideline spectator. It was the cheerleader, the financier, and sometimes the warrior itself. Kings like Ferdinand and Isabella leaned on papal blessings to unify the nation under Catholicism, turning faith into a national identity. By the time the last Moorish stronghold fell in 1492, the Church had embedded itself so deeply into Spanish society that separating it from daily life would be like trying to remove olive oil from a paella, messy and ultimately futile. This historical bond set the stage for centuries of intertwined existence, where the priest was as essential as the baker or the blacksmith, though perhaps with fewer chalices and more incense. In the mornings of traditional Spain, the day often began with the Angelus bell at dawn, a call to prayer that reminded everyone from farmers to fishermen that spiritual duties came before earthly ones. Families would pause in their chores, milking cows, grinding wheat, or whatever rustic task occupied them, and recite a quick Hail Mary. It was a subtle nudge, like a divine alarm clock, ensuring that God was the first thought of the day. Humorously, one might imagine a sleepy villager muttering under his breath about how the bells seemed louder on Mondays, but such grumblings were rare. Piety was the norm, and deviation invited raised eyebrows or worse. As children stirred from their beds, the Church's influence was already at play. Education in traditional Spain was largely in the hands of religious orders. Think of the Jesuits or the Augustinians running schools where reading, writing, and arithmetic were taught alongside catechism and Latin prayers. A boy's first lessons might include memorizing the 10 Commandments before he learned to count to 10, which, in a way, prioritized eternal salvation over temporal math skills, a practical approach if you believe in the afterlife. Girls, often educated by nuns, learned domestic arts infused with moral teachings, preparing them for roles as wives and mothers under the watchful eye of the Virgin Mary. This system wasn't without its quirks. Stories abound of mischievous pupils hiding frogs in the confessional or swapping holy water with vinegar, but such pranks were swiftly met with penance, reinforcing the Church's role as both educator and disciplinarian. By midday, the Church's presence manifested in the communal life of the plaza, that central square where villagers gathered. The local parish church often dominated this space, its spire piercing the sky like an exclamation point on God's authority. Here, priests would hold informal council, advising on disputes over land boundaries or marital squabbles. It was the Church that mediated, drawing on biblical wisdom to resolve conflicts. Turn the other cheek, perhaps, but with a Spanish twist of passionate debate first. In a land where honor was paramount, the confessional booth served as a pressure valve, allowing sins to be whispered away without public scandal. One can almost hear the sigh of relief from a farmer confessing to coveting his neighbor's donkey, only to emerge with a few Hail Marys and a cleaner conscience. Lunchtime, or the sacred hora de la comida, might include blessings over meals, with families crossing themselves before digging into chorizo and lentils. The Church encouraged moderation, frowning on gluttony, though during feast days, this rule bent like a reed in the wind. Speaking of feasts, the liturgical calendar dictated the ebb and flow of traditional Spanish life more than any secular schedule. From Epiphany in January to All Saints' Day in November, holy days peppered the year, providing breaks from toil and opportunities for celebration. Take Semana Santa, Holy Week, in Seville. Processions of hooded penitents carrying massive floats through narrow streets, the air thick with incense and the wail of saetas. It's a spectacle that's equal parts devotion and drama, where even the most stoic Spaniard might shed a tear, or chuckle inwardly at a float-bearer tripping on a cobblestone, reminding us that holiness doesn't preclude human error. These festivals weren't just religious, they were social glue. In rural areas, the Romeria, a pilgrimage to a local shrine, brought communities together for picnics, dances, and prayers. Imagine trekking to a hilltop chapel dedicated to some saint, perhaps San Isidro, patron of farmers, with wagons laden with food and wine. The church sanctioned these outings, blending piety with pleasure, ensuring that faith remained vibrant rather than rote. There's a gentle humor in how these events could turn rowdy. A priest might preach against excess while turning a blind eye to the flowing vino, knowing that a happy flock is a faithful one. Afternoons in traditional Spain often involved labor, but the church infused even work with purpose. Agricultural cycles aligned with saints' days, planting after San Jose, harvesting around Santiago. Fishermen invoked San Telmo for safe seas, while miners prayed to Santa Barbara against cave-ins. This saintly specialization made the divine feel personal, like having a heavenly specialist on speed dial. In urban settings, like Barcelona or Madrid before the industrial boom, guilds operated under religious patronage, with chapels and workshops where artisans paused for vespers. The church's economic role was subtle but significant. It owned vast lands, tithing a portion of harvests, which funded orphanages, hospitals, and alms for the poor. This charitable arm softened the image of an institution that could be austere, showing that faith translated to tangible help, though critics might quip that the tithe was God's way of ensuring the clergy ate well. As evening fell, family life revolved around the rosary. In modest homes with earthen floors and whitewashed walls, parents and children would kneel before a crucifix or an image of the Sagrada Familia, reciting beads in unison. It was a moment of quiet reflection, binding generations. Bedtime stories might draw from biblical tales or lives of saints, like the valiant San Jorge slaying the dragon, which mirrored Spain's own heroic myths. For the unmarried, courtship was chaperoned by church norms. No stolen kisses without the promise of matrimony, lest the Inquisition's ghost, or a vigilant aunt, intervene. Weddings, of course, were grand affairs in the church, with vows exchanged under vaulted ceilings, sealing unions that were as much social contracts as romantic ones. But let's delve deeper into the life cycle, for the church marked every milestone. Birth began with baptism, often within days of delivery, to wash away original sin. A newborn's first outing was to the font, where holy water and oil anointed them into the faith. Godparents, chosen from the community, pledged spiritual guidance, creating extended networks of support. Growing up, First Communion was a rite of passage, with children in white dresses or suits parading like mini brides and grooms. It was a day of family feasting, but also instruction in the Eucharist's mysteries, bread and wine as body and blood, a concept that even adults pondered with a mix of awe and occasional skepticism, though voiced only in hushed tones. Adolescence brought confirmation, strengthening faith against worldly temptations. In traditional Spain, this was crucial in a society where flamenco dances and bullfights tempted the senses. The church provided moral guardrails, preaching chastity and humility, though human nature being what it is, confessions spiked after fiestas. Marriage, the pinnacle of adult life, was solemnized in church, with elaborate ceremonies that could bankrupt a family but ensured divine blessing. The priest's homily might include light-hearted advice on marital harmony, perhaps joking that patience is a virtue especially needed when dealing with in-laws. In illness, the church offered solace through anointing of the sick, formerly extreme unction. Priests visited bedsides, administering last rites if needed, preparing souls for the hereafter. Death was met with vigils, masses, and burials in consecrated ground. Funerals were communal events, with black-clad mourners processing behind the coffin, bells tolling mournfully. The afterlife loomed large. Purgatory was a real concern, prompting endowments for perpetual masses to speed souls to heaven. It's here that the Church's influence felt most profound, easing the fear of mortality with promises of resurrection, though one might wryly note that the wealthier the deceased, the more masses they could afford, suggesting even eternity had a class system. Beyond personal life, the Church shaped societal norms. In politics, from the monarchy's divine right to Franco's regime in the 20th century, Ecclesiastical approval lent legitimacy. Bishops advised kings, and cardinals like Cisneros reformed the realm. The Inquisition, that infamous chapter, enforced orthodoxy, rooting out heretics with zeal that bordered on paranoia. While modern eyes view it harshly, in traditional Spain, it was seen as protecting the faith's purity, much like a gardener pruning weeds, though the methods were, shall we say, overly enthusiastic. Education extended beyond childhood. Seminaries trained priests who became scholars, preserving knowledge through monasteries. The Church's libraries held treasures from Aristotle to Aquinas, influencing philosophy and science. Copernicus's ideas might have clashed with doctrine, but Spanish theologians debated them, contributing to intellectual discourse. In arts, patronage funded cathedrals like Toledo's, with Gothic spires and Baroque altars that awed the faithful. Painters like El Greco captured religious ecstasy, while composers set psalms to music that echoed in choirs. Charity was a cornerstone. Orders like the Franciscans ran soup kitchens, hospitals like Madrid's La Paz tracing roots to religious foundations. During plagues or famines, nuns nursed the sick, embodying Christ's compassion. This welfare net, predating state systems, made the Church indispensable, though not without irony. Vows of poverty amid opulent churches raised eyebrows even then. In daily commerce, markets closed on Sundays, enforcing Sabbath rest. Taverns might skirt this with backdoor dealings, but the Church's moral code discouraged vice, promoting temperance. Yet, Spain's love of wine persisted, with monasteries producing vintages like Rioja, blending spirituality with viticulture in a delightfully pragmatic way. Women's lives were particularly molded by the Church. As mothers, they emulated Mary. As widows, they found refuge in convents. Figures like Santa Teresa de Avila inspired mysticism, showing women could achieve spiritual heights. Yet, patriarchy prevailed, with the Church reinforcing gender roles, though with a nod to female saints as empowered intercessors. Regional variations added flavor. In Basque Country, the Church intertwined with independence movements. In Catalonia, with cultural identity. Pilgrims to Santiago de Compostela walked the Camino, a journey of penance and self-discovery that's as much about blisters as blessings. As Spain modernized, the Church's grip loosened, but in traditional pockets, echoes remain. Villages still celebrate patron saints with fireworks and feasts, where the priest blesses the bull before the run. Safety first, divinely approved. To appreciate fully, consider a day in the life of a fictional but typical Spaniard, say, Don Miguel in 19th century Castile. He wakes to bells, prays, works his fields under San Isidro's gaze, attends midday mass on feast days, confesses weekly, joins evening rosary, and sleeps knowing his soul is accounted for. The Church is his compass, calendar, and community hub. This pervasive role fostered unity in a diverse land, from arid Extremadura to verdant Asturias. It instilled values like charity and resilience, shaping a national character that's passionate yet pious. Critics argue it stifled progress, pointing to Galileo-like suppressions, but defenders counter that it preserved cultural heritage amid invasions and upheavals. In literature, from Cervantes's Don Quixote poking fun at chivalric ideals tinged with religiosity, to Lorca's plays critiquing clerical hypocrisy, the Church looms large. Quixote's madness includes tilting at windmills in a quest mirroring crusades, with priests as occasional comic relief. Music and dance, too. Flamenco's duende has spiritual undertones, akin to religious fervor. Bullfights, once tied to saints' days, blend spectacle with sacrifice, echoing Calvary. Cuisine reflects this. Easter's torrijas symbolize resurrection. Christmas's Turin nods to monastic sweets. Even siesta, that afternoon nap, aligns with post-mass repose, though that's stretching it humorously. Social hierarchies mirrored ecclesiastical ones. Nobility funded chapels, peasants attended masses, creating a vertical bond through faith. In crises, like the Civil War, the Church sided with nationalists, blessing Franco's cause, which later led to reforms under Vatican II. But in traditional eras, neutrality wasn't an option. Faith was partisan. Immigration and conquest spread this model. In the Americas, Spanish missionaries built missions, exporting the daily integration of church and life. Today, secularism rises, but traditions persist. Baptisms, weddings, funerals still church-centric for many. Reflecting on this, the Church's role was multifaceted: spiritual guide, social organizer, moral arbiter, educator, philanthropist. It made life meaningful, infusing routine with transcendence. With subtle humor, one might say it turned ordinary Spaniards into actors in a divine comedy, where laughter and liturgy coexist. Expanding on education, religious schools emphasized rote learning of doctrines, but also practical skills. Boys might study theology for priesthood, a path to social mobility. Nuns taught embroidery with biblical motifs, blending art and faith. In healthcare, herbal remedies from monastic gardens complemented prayers. Saints like San Roque invoked against plagues. Economically, church lands produced grain, wine, olive oil, employing laborers under tithe systems. Fairs on holy days boosted trade. Politically, concordats with the Vatican gave the church veto on laws, influencing everything from divorce bans to censorship. Culturally, theater like Otto's Sacramentals dramatized mysteries, educating illiterate masses. In family dynamics, the church promoted large broods, viewing children as blessings, practical in agrarian societies needing hands. For the elderly, convents offered retirement, with prayers as occupation. In leisure, card games avoided on Sundays, but processions provided entertainment. Artisans crafted religious icons, from crucifixes to retablos, sustaining crafts. In science, though conflicted, Jesuits advanced astronomy, mapping stars under God's heavens. Literature, mystics like San Juan de la Cruz wrote poetry of divine love, influencing romantics. Music, Gregorian chants in monasteries, evolving to polyphony in cathedrals. Dance, some folk dances originated in religious rituals, like the jota with saintly ties. Sports, even pelota in Basque lands played near churches, with blessings for teams. Environmentally, church teachings on stewardship influenced land use, though exploitation occurred. In warfare, chaplains blessed troops, invoking Santiago Matamoros. Diplomacy, papal nuncios mediated alliances. In summary, though this is narrative, the church was the heartbeat of traditional Spanish daily life, pumping faith through every vein. Its influence, profound and pervasive, shaped a society where the sacred and secular danced in tandem, with occasional missteps adding humanity to holiness.